Welcome to the Zveda podcast. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Lorena.
We're a community for women by women. We're here to help each other rise to impact generations.
Hey ladies, good to see you today. We hope that you've been having a great week. We're excited to just kick off our episode 12 today. Woohoo! We are going to be diving into some of the core values that we did in our last series in a more detailed, deeper way. So We're super excited about that. The title of this episode is Remember the Child. And Jamie will kind of remind us of our core value in here in a second. But I want to talk about a trending topic. I found a really funny article on the Babylon Bee this past week that was all about like women tricking men into cooking.
Nice.
Which I think is just too funny. And how basically the story of how that happened was back in 1940s or 50s, where women were doing a lot around the house and cooking most meals. Some women got together. They were like, man, we're just feeling frustrated that we're having to do all the cooking around here. Right. And so one of the ladies is like, well, how can we involve men in helping around the house more? And another lady had the idea of if we can have them help cook, maybe that could alleviate some of the pressure and the stress that we feel at home. And so they got together, a few women just banded together and they came up with the charcoal grill. Yes. They're like, okay, this is something that, at least probably from their perspective, men will do a great job at. We'll get them outside and we'll trick them into cooking.
They'll cook meat.
Yes. So I thought that was hilarious. So that's where the charcoal grill originated from.
We're going to have to post a link to this so you guys can check this out.
Yes, we'll definitely share that. So I thought that was just a hilarious thing to share with you guys before we roll into the main part of our session today.
So trick those guys. Those guys. No, it's funny real quick. Two of my friends, their husbands got smokers.
Okay, to do brisket and meats?
Yes. Yeah. And they bought them at the beginning of the pandemic. And both of my friends were like, oh my God, if we have any more smoked meats, I'm going to puke.
Oh, it's the opposite end of that pendulum.
A little bit of balance would be good.
Right.
Anyway, so that's funny. That's fun. We'll post a link to the article. It's just something.
We'll share it.
Something to laugh at. We could all use a laugh, right?
Yep.
So this week, we, as Lorena shared, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper to one of our core values that we shared on episode 8 called We Aspire to Awakening. And what we talked about, if you recall from that episode, is awakening that child that is inside of us. What are those things that we at one time dreamed about or at one time acted out as children, and what part of that might actually be a part of our call. So if you recall, I shared a story about, for me, it was, I would take my boombox, my little radio out to my dad's barn, and I would use his workbench as my stage, and I would sing and I would dance and I would, who knows what, teach and talk and tell it like it is, I'm sure, to my imaginary audience.
Yes.
But that was just really part of who I was. And that's really translated into a lot of what I do today.
Yeah. How would you say, specifically with what you're doing and your
just speaking and worship. I'm a worship director at my church, and being on stage teaching. I love to teach, to share wisdom that I've learned from scripture. And this podcast, this right here is exactly part of what awakening the child was for me.
Yeah.
And I know you, Lorena, you talked about teaching.
Yeah, which
yourself.
we could even dig more into that today. Kind of what we want to do is, you might be thinking, well, how do I actually awaken and remember the child, from my childhood, and how do I connect and translate those things into my daily life and the season that I'm in now? And what we want to do for this episode and the next one is give you some practical tools to kind of go into that gold mine and harvest out the gold so that you can bring it into the current season that you're in.
Awesome. So what you might want to consider as you sit here and listen or watch today, ladies, is grab a pen and paper, grab your journal. We're going to take you through some questions and I will actually be interviewing Lorena today, and you can take a moment to jot down some of these questions. And if you're driving, just maybe later go back and listen and jot some of these down, because really what we want to encourage you to do, as Lorena said, is to take what we're sharing today and really use that as your own tool. That maybe you're in a place where you're feeling maybe a little stuck. Maybe you're in a position or a job that you're not really, it's not your dream job. It's not what you want to be doing forever. But you might be stuck of like, well, how do I move forward? How can I move to that discovering of what I really want to be doing and desiring to be doing? So that's really what we want to focus on today.
Yeah. Or you may be in college and maybe even taking a gap year because of the pandemic, and, taking a couple steps back to assess, well, what is it that I want to pursue? So this is a great tool and very practical use case to bring those things from your childhood into present day.
Like, what is next for me? Right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
big question.
Yeah. And we wanted to do kind of like a role play or interview style for this episode to model if you want to do this with a friend too. You don't necessarily have to do it by yourself, although if that's what you prefer, awesome. Like, find a space where you won't be interrupted, put your phone down, and just have some quiet, secluded space, either alone or with a friend, and walk through some of these questions.
All right. Well, let's get started, shall we?
Okay.
All right. So outside of school, Lorena, what activities did you enjoy doing either after school or on the weekends?
Let's see. So I can remember, after school, well, I was actually one who would ask my teacher for like any extra papers with like our assignments.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Which some people are like, Lorena, like you're such a teacher's pet. And I'm like, okay, but let's get beyond that to like, harvesting the gold. Right. But that's really what I would do because I loved to play school. I know a little bit, I played house a little bit too, but school is what I played more. Like in my room, I'd come home from school, I would do my own homework, but then I'd have my little clipboard with my roster of 20 imaginary students on it. And I would teach them what I had just learned in school that day. And so a lot of times that's what I would do after school. I'm trying to think other things, like when I was finished with homework, I'd play school sometimes, or
maybe like extracurricular activities.
Yeah, I love dance. I took dance lessons. Also loved making up dances of my own. So similar to you, Jamie, like I had my little boom box and put my little CD in and
CDs.
Dress up in a big flowy skirt, and I would just go in the living room or even outside with like some of the girls that lived in my neighborhood on the same street. We would make up dances together and perform those for people that lived on the street. So that was something that I enjoyed doing. I'm trying to think. I love doing crafts too. Like like my mom would take me to Hobby Lobby and buy, different, papers and paints and crayons, all kinds of different things. And I would just make crafts and creations as gifts for people.
Just create.
I would create.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what gifts, and you mentioned one there that your mom would give you some things from like hobby type things, but what did you get for your birthday or other seasons or holidays that you're most excited about?
Yeah. On the teaching theme, I actually, this shows that I am probably on the edge of the millennial cusp, is I asked for an overhead for Christmas one year. Because I wanted to have my little piece.
I feel really, I'm like, I was asking for like makeup and, microphones and karaoke machines.
Yeah.
I feel Lorena's putting me to shame here.
Well, it's in different areas.
She's getting overheads and transparencies
for Christmas. Yeah, that's what I wanted one year. And it was so funny. My parents actually got me one. And at that time, it was like still, believing in Santa Claus. And it was like to Lorena from Santa is, projected up on the wall. I remember that gift. I was jazzed about that because it, played school in my room and it was fun. I'm trying to think what other gifts. I'll say there is what's coming to mind right now is my dad, after we took a family vacation to Big Bend and went camping one year. He made a scrapbook for me.
Wow.
Yeah. Like a handmade scrapbook, not like one of the digital ones which those are great too, that you can make online. But yeah, he like cut out pieces of paper, glued them down with photos and like little punch out like butterflies and hearts. And it was just like super sweet. But I remember that gift really, really meant a lot to me. He like captured that trip and wanted to help me remember that through that gift.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
For a dad.
Yeah.
For a dude.
I know. my dad. Yeah. He's more sentimental like that.
Well, who are you closest to, or who would you talk with the most?
And again, this is elementary school kind of age, right? Like, yeah, younger childhood. Well, I did have my first best friend. Her name's Claire. We did a lot of things with her. We played house together, played school. We'd, adventure things outside. So she was one that I talked to a lot growing up. And I'd say my dad. I was really close with my dad growing up. A lot of, we would do like daddy-daughter dates to H-E-B. We'd like get groceries together, or, he'd take me to different restaurants or like downtown, those kinds of things. But we're very similar in personality and temperament. So I think just, being close with him relationally when I was younger.
Well, along the same lines of family, what experiences with your family significantly influenced you?
Well, speaking to my dad, he really values this phrase like seize the moment. And so when I was growing up, he always wanted to try to go on at least one family vacation each year to see different parts of America. So like different times we'd go camping like in Colorado or Utah, or even, other parts of Texas, or I remember one trip we went to Washington, D.C. and checked out some of the monuments there, museums, just to have a, appreciation for our nation and a sense of patriotism. But he was just really big on experiences. And so I think, family vacations really impacted me. And I will say there's one church experience that really influenced me growing up. I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, and I guess I just wasn't the one who loved to play games at church, like in kids' church. And so my parents were like, well, you have two choices. Like you can either go to kids' church or you can come and sit in our adult Bible study fellowship class, and you can sit in the back and color, whatever you want to do.
For some reason, I see that's where you were. That's with your projector, teaching the class.
I ended up choosing. I was like, I just want to, hang out with y'all in y'all's class. Well, what impacted me was at that point in time, my parents were going through this curriculum on the concept of a blessing. So when parents bless their children, as well as the concept of a tribute, which we can talk more about this in another episode, where kids, so sons and daughters, and this can be any age, but make some kind of a gift or they write a letter being a tribute to their parents of how they honor their parents. And I remember my mom, she's very shy and doesn't like talking in front of people, but she had made her tribute to her parents. And it was this big photo spread and a big frame and a long letter written out to her parents. And I remember she got up and was sharing this in front of 40 other, adults and trembling and crying as she's reading this letter of honor to her parents. And I remember just sitting in the back of the room being like, wow, like this is powerful, like to take time to honor people and for parents to release a blessing over their children, like just that kind of exchange back and forth, what that does to the family and relationships. It just marked me as a young girl.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So I think, that experience, I think really formed in me just an appreciation for people and taking time to celebrate people in that way.
Wow. Well, the question that most kids are asked, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yes.
How'd you answer that one?
Yeah. I can think of different times. The neighborhood that we grew up in, our neighbors next door, the husband actually ended up having a terminal illness, and we'd go over there as neighbors quite often just to have meals together and just spend time with them, love on them as a couple. And again, I'd bring my little boombox over my dress and I would like dance in the living room, and that was fun. And afterwards, some of the older adults who were our neighbors would ask me, Lorena, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what came out of me, and this is right after I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, was I want to be a missionary. I want to sing, dance, and cook for people. It was like this phrase, that just came out of me as like,
Wow.
7 years old. Like that's just what came out of me. So that's what I wanted to do. Wanted to be a missionary, sing, dance, and cook for people.
All right, we'll have to loop back around to that.
Yeah.
So if you received an allowance or any money for gifts, what would you spend your money on besides projectors?
Well, that was Christmas, but yes, I'd probably buy Visa pens. No, I'm trying to think. Well, I did. Yeah. I mean, I loved arts and crafts. So like anytime I go to Hobby Lobby, I, want to buy something there, but, clothes. Big time. Yes. I was, for all y'all who remember Limited 2, I used to love shopping there. But that was one of the things I would spend my money on because I just love, at least for me, like clothes are such an expression of like just my creativity and my sense of style. And I loved trying different things. I mean, I remember even when I was really little, I loved to wear red cowgirl boots. Like when I was like 3 or 4 years old.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, it's like super expressive. So I would spend my allowance on like clothes or maybe sometimes candy.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
So when you were younger, this is a really good question. When you were younger, how did you see yourself?
Well, I will say I did perceive myself honestly as shy. That was a component. While I did, love like, I believed I was creative with these different expressions and love to really learn and understand different things, but I liked to either do them in a group of people. Well, sometimes I guess like one example, like with neighbors, I wouldn't mind dancing in the living room by myself, but like whenever I'd make up dances with my friends, I'd love to do that with people. Or like when I was teaching, I preferred to do it like in my room by myself. So I think, I mean, I definitely think like a sense of creativity I saw about myself. And then maybe, a little bit of like shyness, which I think meant like in middle school when I started getting into singing more, it helped me grow out of being like limited by, stage fright or being shy, kind of worked through that. But I think those two things were what I identified as like how I saw myself.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and then this is a deep question. And so we'll end on this question before we kind of go back and dig into some reflection pieces. But as a child, did you have any dreams, either night dreams or maybe daydreams?
Oh, wow.
Or those, out of body experiences that maybe influenced you in any way?
I did have... This was maybe a little bit older, but it's, I mean, in my mind, still a part of my childhood. I did have a dream where and it was very memorable, where I like was in this tube type structure and was launched into another nation. And like this tube kind of came and hit the ground in this wheat field. And there were all these just people that looked very different than me walking around. And I noticed that a lot of these people had tails for some reason, and I didn't have one. And at that point, there was like this sense of like them like trying to get me, or they noticed that I was different and not one of them. Ended up, taking refuge in a house and being put in this room to rest while my tail grew, which was kind of interesting. And I remember a mentor of mine now helped me actually interpret the dream, and it has to do with missions, and it has to do with reaching out to other people. But he said specifically that he's like, Lorena, there's a process of you growing in your character, your maturity, and your identity, like the tail representing your identity that is still being formed. And that's what really stuck out to me from the dream, and spoke to me at, I think I was maybe high school when I had that dream, like freshman year in high school. And it just encouraged me to kind of stay the course of like growing in maturity in my character and really understanding who I am and my identity.
Awesome. Well, the whole point of these questions is to obviously, like we talked about in the beginning, to really bring up those things that you once were passionate about, that once inspired you, that you would navigate yourself toward. And so, we want to take a moment now and look at what were some of those key things as we walked through that exercise with you, Lorena, that were beginning to stick out or resurface.
Okay.
And really, think through like, how has that begun to shape where you are now? And I know we'll talk a lot more about that in the next episode, but, I picked out a few key things.
What would you say just from your observation, like what surfaced for you? And then maybe I can riff off of that.
Yeah. So, you mentioned multiple times create. You loved to create.
Yeah.
And whether that was through speaking or teaching or crafts, or even clothes.
Yeah.
Like there was a creative nature there that just was part of your being. You didn't have to try hard to achieve it. It came naturally to you. You wanted to create. That's who you were.
Yeah.
And it showed up in the gifts that you enjoyed, or asked for. Like we joked about the projector, but that was a way for you to actually project your creativity.
Wow.
And to act that out, to be in that moment. And again, it's not something you were striving for or trying to fit in. It just was natural to you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Also, just hearing about the impact that the experience with your parents in their Bible class that you chose to attend.
Yeah.
I do believe early on you began to show signs of maturity or a desire for spiritual maturity. And for the fact that you chose to instead go play with the kids, that you were choosing to go sit with the adults, you wanted to soak up that wisdom.
Yeah.
And that you began to be impacted by this piece that they showed about your mom showed about their parents.
Yeah.
And this blessing, like, I know that's always been, that's a core of who you are, that you want to bless others. It's part of your creativity. And again, like putting together, talking points for our podcast and guiding people and through mentorship and your flower arrangements, like, those are just things that are flowing very naturally. And so creativity is a big piece, I believe, a desire for spiritual maturity and being able to share that and being, even in the dream that you were given, that the Lord blessed you with, when you were in high school, that he was showing you, I'm going to be developing you in this. And for you to see all of these different people and know that someday you would be impacting them.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's what I saw. And it's funny to hear all of those and then see like who you are and how that just translates just naturally. And I just want to drive the point home, ladies, that all of those things that Lorena shared, and as you go through this exercise with, either with pen and paper or with a friend and pen and paper, recording this, those things you did without striving.
Absolutely. Or where no one forced you. It wasn't obligation. Like what I like to think of it as, like, what would you get lost doing? Like you'd lose all sense of time and feel so much joy.
And still probably to this day. So if you start to kind of look at the themes of your life and your childhood and where you are now and what you still enjoy doing, I guarantee you there's going to be a theme there and that's consistent with that, just ease into who you are.
Yeah. That's great, Jamie. I think what's powerful is sitting down to do this with somebody is great because you can almost have the benefit of outside perspective. And Jamie, I know you also are very prophetic in nature too. And so you can see these themes pop out. But even just in the course of natural conversation, it's easy to see the themes. So I think, maybe try, like maybe first pass at some of these questions on your own and then do it with a friend and y'all can even swap. That could be fun.
It really could. And it could be encouraging because, talking it out with a friend could actually, like you said, they might be able to pull something out that you're not even seeing.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, have you thought of doing this?
Ooh.
And it could be the launching point
for something new.
Yeah.
I love that. Thanks, Jamie, for facilitating that piece. And we're
Yes.
excited to, just continue that conversation in our next episode. But as we move along, we've got a health and hospitality tip, one specifically related to hospitality that I wanted to share. It's just when having people over into your home, what are some great things that you can do to make them feel that much more a sense of welcome and warmth? So a couple things is just be ready to welcome them when new people or guests come into your house with a smile. And for me, I love hugging people. I love the embrace.
You mean don't be running around vacuuming still?
Right. Or like continue, like if you're having people over for a meal, like
Yes.
continuing to prep, like I think it's good just to make sure to like, even if you still have some stuff to prep, like pause that. When they knock on the door, take a few minutes just to make that connection with a smile,
really
greeting, a hug. Yeah, it's powerful. Another thing is just prepare some kind of refreshment. So if you're just having somebody over for, a chat one afternoon or evening, it's really nice to have maybe just some simple like lemon or cucumber water is great, or some fizzy water, which I know people love that. Or even, if you are doing alcohol, some kind of, fun spritzy alcoholic beverage could be nice. That's always something that I like to recommend as a go-to is some kind of refreshment is nice. Yeah. And if you have time, light a candle. I've been doing that more recently. I've had a couple of gatherings at my house this past weekend, and I like people notice. They're like, "Oh, Lorena, I like your candle."
Yeah, it just brings a warmth. I don't know.
Does.
I love candles too.
Yeah, it does. And let's see, displaying a favorite photo of you and your guests could be a really intentional way, especially if it's somebody who like a longtime friend from a, past season in your life and they're coming to visit you and you haven't seen them for a year or two. Like that could be really sweet,
cool.
To have a photo printed out. I know like Walgreens, you can get them printed for super cheap. Turn off the TV, turn on some music. That's really great. If you have Spotify or Pandora, like look up some fun playlists. If it's like a dinner party that you're having, I know it's like, there's one that's like, that I listen to a lot. What is it? Feel good eating or something like that. And it's like, just like jams for like a fun dinner. But those are nice just to have that playing in the background subtly, not too loud, to where it's fighting conversation, but that's really nice. And then, just putting technology away and giving your guests that full attention. I think really we desire that genuine connection. And there's so much that, we feel like we connect with people to a certain degree, like over technology and our devices, but having that face to face, like not forgetting the beauty of that kind of connection too.
So good.
Yeah.
And again, your creative nature comes out into health and hospitality. And I love it. And it's so helpful to get these ideas because sometimes you're just like, what do I do? I want to welcome them, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
All right. So to wrap our episode today, we're going to end with a question from you, our community. This is a good one.
Okay. What you got, Jamie?
So someone wrote in asking, what are some ways I cannot feel so lonely? It's okay when I'm with friends, but at night, well, thoughts are a little down. Help. #single life.
All right, Jamie, you want to tackle this one?
Well, I am single myself. I'm, much older. I'm an older single.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
But, I believe that we all have those same feelings.
Yes.
It's great when we're around people and in community and friends and we're out, but sometimes at home when you're sitting there, it can hit. But I would just say, and I was giving this advice to a friend of mine just last weekend to give to some of her single friends that are just struggling right now. And it's embrace the single life, embrace the alone time, because it's not always going to be there.
What does that look like to you? Like practically embracing the alone time. What does that mean?
I think it's, finding, we talk a lot on this podcast about finding what you're passionate about and discovering something new about yourself. And I first want to just acknowledge, like, it's okay to feel lonely.
Yeah.
It's okay to be like, Lord, I'm feeling a little lonely. I'm feeling a little down. Direct me in the right, give me a direction. And I would say 9 times out of 10, you'll either get a phone call or a text or something will surface that you're like, man, I should focus on this. But spend the time doing something that in the future, when you're not single, you won't have an opportunity to.
Wow.
For example, read a book. I mean, if you enjoy reading and you just really don't have the time, during the week or spend the weekends, like sit down with a good book at night. Lorena has given us so many awesome tips about health and hospitality, but that's for us too. Make you a nice cheese and meat tray, get you a glass of wine, grab your book, sit down, set your atmosphere, and just enjoy some peace.
Yes.
If you like to get outside, go for a walk. Go for a run. Take the opportunity to get an extra exercise in. Lord knows I could do that. If you like to cook, find some recipes, cook some stuff up, make a video of it, post it to your Instagram account, share it with a friend, and I would just say, a great way to embrace singleness is to ask, and we may have mentioned this before, but ask around to other people on how you can help. So if you have other friends that maybe are starting their, married life, or they've embarked on child rearing, God forbid, they have babies at home. Ooh. People need sitters. Yeah. They need a date night. They need a break, or maybe there's just some people right around where you live where older people could really use some help getting their groceries.
Or even some company.
Up the stairs. Yeah. Having conversation, dropping off a coffee, cheering someone up. So it really is, when we focus our time on someone else, we get out of the slump.
That's right.
We really do. Like I can tell you so many times where I've just wanted to curl up on the couch and binge watch Netflix and get more depressed and down, and I'm alone. But the moments where I'm like, no, not today. Today I'm going to choose to make some calls and see who needs something and volunteer for something, for a friend, for a family member. It lifts my spirit because all of a sudden I'm not thinking about myself
anymore.
And
you're giving. Yeah.
And giving.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I think that's key right there. That's a really helpful nugget, because it's the more you focus inward, the more it's just the conversation and the dialogue internally is going to go inward. Right. And we need to, especially in those moments where you feel like, oh, it might be this like down spiral of, I just feel alone and I'm depressed, all these thoughts, which we're saying, they're valid to have, but you do have authority to halt that and to shift the focus, shift the, the gaze of your eyes to help someone else, or just to love on yourself, like Jamie was saying, like make yourself a charcuterie board and just enjoy the peaceful time, of solitude. I feel like we don't really understand what that is as a culture anymore, but it's so needed to have some just quiet time. Yeah. So I think that's powerful though, is shifting the attention off of yourself, or at least off of the negative, oh, why can't I change this? Or why am I lonely perspective, into a different place, and you will feel your emotions follow that shift. Yeah. And, I hear some singles sometimes like, well, nobody ever invites me anywhere. I don't get invited. Well, I'll tell you what, being a very confident, sure woman, it's pretty rare that I'm actually invited. Same. It's just, it's weird, but it is the way it is. People think we have it all together and we don't need that time. So instead, pick up the phone, text a friend, like, hey, I'm putting this event together. I'm putting together dinner tonight. I'm going to do wine and cheese, or let's have a game night. Yeah. You be the one that's inviting, because I guarantee you there's someone right on the other end that feels like they're not getting invited to. Right. And just be intentional and create that space. And I think you'll, be surprised to see that other people need that as well. Yeah. So we can do this single life together. Yes. All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Please, please, please continue to tune in and join the conversation by sending us your questions and your comments. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Zveda podcast. Keep your questions coming so we can rise together. Visit Zveda.com to talk to us and join our community. That's Zveda.com. We'll see you next week.